Hello, my friend. Odds are, if you're human, you've experienced something difficult in your life, some form of suffering, some form of traumatic event, losing a loved one, some moment of rejection, some moment of isolation, confusion, frustration, right? Nobody lives a squeaky clean, picture perfect life, although we like to pretend we do on social media. These intense moments, they're painful, but they can also leave wounds. And these inner wounds aren't like a wound on your leg or on your skin. Those heal on their own. But these inner wounds that impact us on a more emotional or mental level, they won't heal unless we do the inner work on them. And the most important reason to heal these wounds is not because they make you flawed or defective. Actually, our wounds are what make us great when we choose to heal them. But if we don't heal our inner wounds, we carry them around as negative thoughts and negative patterns that we actually used at a young age to try to compensate or protect the wounds. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I have healed my inner wounds and my traumas. And I'm also going to show you a really powerful 3-step process that I've used to help over 500 people in the last 7 years heal their inner wounds so they can deepen their own transformation and also grow spiritually as well. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story. 11 years ago, my mom, who was my absolute favorite person in the world, she told me that she had triple negative breast cancer. I remember the conversation. She looked me in the eyes and she told me that she had this pretty severe disease. And I was like, absolutely not. I was totally in denial. I was like, no, that can't happen. That can't happen. And for 14 months, she pretty much died slowly. Through all of the treatments and the chemos and the surgeries, it just ate her up. It really broke her down. And then 14 months later, she passed away. She died. And I was about 23 at the time. And if I'm being honest, I witnessed great pain and suffering. I witnessed the pain and suffering of my mom, but I also was going through my own pain and suffering of watching the person I love most die slowly in front of me. And when she also died and officially left her body, again, I was left with that great loss, that great grief of losing a loved one. And this pain was so deep and losing her was so traumatic to me. I didn't really know how to handle it. I didn't really have a big toolbox of inner tools. And so what I did was, like anybody does when they have a wound, I literally did the best thing I knew how to do in that moment to alleviate the pain and move forward. I literally closed my heart because my heart was broken. So I literally energetically closed my heart to protect myself. So I developed thought forms and stories about love being dangerous, about vulnerability being dangerous, about opening my heart being dangerous. And again, I didn't do this because I was bad or dumb or defective. I did this in a deep effort to protect myself. Because that's something that we need to understand. The wound is not the problem. All humans carry wounds. Suffering gives us character. Suffering gives us strength. It's what we do to compensate for the unhealed wound is what can limit us. And so for myself, for years, I just walked around with a broken heart that was being protected by armor. I would pretend that I was more okay than I was. I would pretend that I had everything figured out. I would pretend that I was super strong and that nothing could bother me. But in reality, those were just compensations. My heart was broken. And so if I wanted to free my heart, if I wanted to drop all of the self-protective armor that was creating so much inauthenticity and making it so hard to connect with people and let love into my life, if I wanted to let go of the armor, I needed to heal the wound, right? And so what I had to do was I really had to acknowledge the deep pain that I hadn't felt. I had to really acknowledge and accept and feel the grief of losing my mom. And that was super hard and uncomfortable because negative emotions are uncomfortable. Emotions are energy in motion. So our emotions actually come to clean us. Our emotions come to heal us. Our emotions come to help us. And so even though there are those really uncomfortable, painful emotions, actually by allowing ourselves to feel those emotions consciously and intentionally, we actually allow the emotions to bring their medicine. And so working with different experts, counselors, coaches, plant medicine, developing my own personal practices of like meditation, journaling, reflection, reflection, reading tons of powerful books about the power of healing, the power of the mind, the power of the soul, the power of the divine, all allowed me to move forward and allow myself to feel what needed to be felt. And then this allowed me to really heal from what happened with my mom. I also want to share a story with a really powerful client of mine named Scott. And Scott was referred to me by a friend, and Scott, he self-admitted, told me he was the Cadillac of trauma, meaning he had been through it all. He had been through sexual abuse. He served in the military as a medic and had seen people being blown up. He was even in a cult. And so he was emotionally abused and spiritually abused. And really, honestly, by the time he got to me as a client, he was close to taking his own life. And so this is basically me saying, if it worked for him, it can work for you, right? And through systematically re-exploring these wounds, which again, nobody wants to do that, right? Our ego does not want to go back to our wounds because one, it's uncomfortable. And two, we have to admit that we have these wounds. We have to admit that we have these things that need love and attention and healing. But he was courageous enough to go through the healing process and go through the coaching process with me. And very similar to how I, eventually healed from losing my mom and witnessing her battle her cancer, he also allowed himself in a safe, professionally held space, allowed himself to feel some of these unfelt feelings that allowed the wounds to close, which then allowed him to release what he put in place subconsciously to protect the wounds. He had a lot of thought forms that life is unfair, life is dangerous, life is not good, he is not worthy, right? These are all thought forms that aren't true, but they're thought forms that he cultivated or put in place because he needed them to keep the wound safe. So that's the payoff. When we heal the wound, which can be uncomfortable, our subconscious mind releases what we put in place to protect the wound. And that's where freedom happens, right? A mentor of mine once said, the protector becomes the prison guard. And that what that means is all of these things we do to protect ourselves as a result of past wounds we've experienced, they protect us for however long they do, maybe a couple years, maybe a couple decades. But eventually, those old protectors become the prison guards, and they actually start to constrict our ability to express ourselves. They actually constrict our ability to give and receive love. They actually restrict our ability to speak up and ask for what we deserve. And Scott's a perfect example. When you heal the wound, you release the old protection mechanisms that have held you back. And now Scott is thriving. He himself is now a healer and helps other men who have been serving in the military. He's living in a state of abundance. He has deep connections with those in his community. Another client I want to tell you about, his name's Christian. And Christian, when he came to me as a client, he had some really serious wounding around trauma, some serious wounding with his relationship with his dad. And so when he came to me, he was really struggling with a lot of negative self-talk, doubt, fear, and anxiety. And here's the thing, all of those fears and doubts and anxieties weren't really about his life in real time. They were leftover protection mechanisms from the old wounds. And so again, going through this process of reconfronting these wounds, not from a place of victimhood, but from a place of compassion and curiosity, allowed him to feel what needed to be felt, allowed him to gain a higher level of understanding. And when he came back to these parts of himself with this compassion and with this higher understanding, again, the psychological and emotional wounds could heal, which means his psyche, his subconscious could release all of the constricting thought forms that at one time protected him, but now were really causing him a lot of pain and frustration. Fast forward to now, he's actually getting married in a month. He's thriving as a real estate agent, and he actually mentors other people in AA. So now he's actually living his purpose and giving back to his community. So now I'm actually going to teach you this 3-step process that, again, I've used personally to really help heal myself from some really painful moments and traumatic moments. I call it the 3 F's, the 3 F's of healing. The first F is you gotta face it, right? And I know that sounds simple. And when I say face it, I don't mean you have to battle it. Like, it's not a showdown, but we have to face it. We have to look at it. We have to bring awareness to it, right? Because a lot of our wounds are subconscious, meaning we've mentally hidden them away for a while because we haven't wanted to look at them or deal with them. And you can think of your awareness like a flashlight, right? When we wake up, our awareness is on our life. It's on our loved ones. It's on our work. It's on our phone. It's on what we got to do in the day. Very rarely do we take the spotlight of our awareness and turn it back on ourselves. right? And so step one is we got to face ourselves, right? With loving exploration, we have to actually like acknowledge what are the wounds we may be carrying, what may have happened to us in our childhood or earlier in our life, where again, we were mistreated or we were traumatized or we went through a period of pain, discomfort, confusion, frustration, where we felt isolated, lonely, unloved, rejected. Here's the thing, we don't have to fix it, right? We're not going on a witch hunt to fix what's wrong. Like I said, our wounds are eventually the source of our superpower, but they need to be explored, right? Just like seeds planted in the dirt, they need sunshine to help them grow and prosper. A mentor once told me that there's nothing to fear in you. Don't fear any of your parts. So with courage, love, and compassion, I like to do this journaling. I like to go, what parts of me are suffering? What parts of me may be wounded? And I just let my hand write, almost as if I'm letting my body answer the question, right? And so you'll see that some really, really powerful stuff can come up. The second F is we gotta feel. I said earlier in this video, emotions are energy in motion. Our emotions come to re-enliven us. Our emotions come to clean us. Our emotions come to remove what has been stuck. And so a lot of our wounds can't heal because a lot of the pain hasn't been felt. And so a lot of us haven't been taught how to feel, especially men, right? We're emotionally constipated. We're like, we don't want to feel the negative stuff. We only want to feel good about ourselves all the time, right? Here's the deal. Life is good and bad. That's just the truth. Anybody who's trying to sell you a version of life that's only unicorns and rainbows is selling you some bullshit. Life is two sides of the coin. It's the yin and the yang. And the more we can come to peace with that, and this is what the Buddha would teach, and this is what the Taoists teach, is the more you can come to peace with the ebbs and flows of life, the more you're gonna be able to enjoy the highs, and the more you'll be able to endure the lows without getting attached. And so allowing yourself to feel what has not been felt is what's going to allow these wounds to finally heal themselves, so your subconscious mind can let go of the old protection mechanisms that hold you back. Here's the disclaimer. Some feelings can be intense, especially if the wounds are intense or from trauma. And so if doing this alone feels a little too intense, then I would recommend either finding someone to hold space for you, finding a therapist, finding a coaching program, reaching out to me. I specialize in helping men and women go through this process, especially men. This is what I've been trained in for the last 7 years. So again, if this feels a lot, you don't have to do this alone by any means. So you face it, you feel it, and then the third F is forgiveness. And this is one that our egos do not like. And a lot of us have been taught forgiveness wrong. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending it's okay when it's not. That's not forgiveness. That's called denial, right? Forgiveness is not letting somebody off the hook, even though you're still deeply mad. That's not forgiveness. Again, that's faking it. Forgiveness is actually a spiritual quality that lives within us that doesn't make it okay. It allows it to be done. So when I had to forgive when my mom died, I actually had to forgive God. That's who I was most mad at, or the universe or the divine. That's who I was most mad at. I was mad at God for taking my mom, and I was mad at my mom for leaving early. And so I had to truly extend forgiveness. And again, I wasn't pretending it's okay. Forgiveness is something you call for. Forgiveness is something you pray for. Forgiveness is something you intend. You go, I am ready to let this be done. And then forgiveness is actually a spiritual energy within you. It's in the chakra system. It's located in the heart center. And what forgiveness comes to do is it comes to clean us, and it comes to make things present. It comes to pull us out of the past and allows us to be present. So forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is actually for you. Forgiveness allows you to be present. And so there's a specific way, like I said, forgiveness is not exchanged from ego to ego. Forgiveness is a spiritual thing that you call for in your heart, and you say, I'm ready to really be done with this. I'm so ready to let this go. I'm so ready to not be angry. I'm so ready to not be a victim. I am praying, calling, intending for forgiveness. Forgiveness, please help me. And almost like a spiritual being, forgiveness comes and cleans your heart and allows you to be present. Now I get it, and I want to be realistic. Healing wounds doesn't happen in a day or a week or even a month. It can be a real, serious process, and it can be really difficult without guidance. So I've opened enrollment in my private coaching program where I help men step into their own deep healing so that they can go through their own self-transformation process, ultimately so they can grow spiritually, personally, professionally, and also step into their purpose. Because like I said, when we heal our wounds, our purpose gets revealed to us. I'm going to leave a link in the description and pinned comments of this video where you can go, and if you want to learn more about that program, you can watch another video there, and then you can book a call with me, and it'll be me personally where we can actually discuss if you're ready for this, if the program's right, and how to move forward. And I hope to see you there.